So another thing that I definitely want to kind of switch gears upon a bit is talk about this Patreon, the 6 out of 10 club. What was the
Hmm.
inspiration behind making this like for the fans and all of this that goes into it? There is so much cool stuff. Like all of our like listeners listening in or watching this on YouTube, definitely check this out because every tier just like has so much more unique stuff for the fans.
Yeah, it was funny. Meredith is handling a lot of the fulfillment stuff, and she built out her own spreadsheet and like how each tier, and she added all the benefits for each tier, and it was like a true graph growing as the tier, and it was really funny to see it laid out horizontally because it was like, yeah, it was a perfect slope. I was like, oh wow, did not mean to do that intentionally, but that, I mean, we spent a lot of time prepping on it. So the history of it is like over a year ago, I had seen some Patreon stuff, and I listen to podcasts a lot. And I know that they're on there, and other like graphic artists and stuff like that are on there, and like YouTube people I follow, or like a synth guy I follow has a Patreon. And I brought it up to the band, and like, I hate to say this, but this might be part of the future. And I hate to say it because like fans should not have to bear the brunt. That's not fair because fans are the ones supporting, but I don't know. The system is broken is basically the only good way
Mm.
of putting it. Especially with this push towards streaming and streaming services that don't pay fairly. Like there's a big joke that
Oh,
like, imagine
yeah.
if Spotify paid even a penny per stream, how much better off we would all be. And that's
Mhm.
that's absurd. But I said I hate to say it, but I think it's the future because it's a way for fans to directly support and know that their money is going towards the thing they care about as opposed to going to making Apple richer. You know what I mean? Um, and so I brought it up to the band, and everybody was kind of lukewarm on it just because it's a new system, especially for musicians. It's a new kind of model, um, and anything new like that is naturally going to kind of rub you the wrong way. Um, And then in December, it kicked around the idea of doing it for a solo album with our managers. But nothing ever really came of it because it's so much work.
Mm.
And then as soon as the Wonder Years tour was postponed, I sent a text like, we have to do this. Like we're gonna lose out on all of our revenue for the year, and not like revenue from a business sense, revenue in the sense of like this is how we survive now. Not because we've been a mega successful band, but because we all lost our jobs before this cycle. So as of January, none of us had a job except to tour, and we had tours booked pretty much from February until the following January, um, and then beyond even. So as soon as everything ground to a halt, I was like, oh, we
Mm.
all don't have jobs. We all gave up our apartments, so we live in precarious, not precarious, like half of us just moved in with family. But that feels precarious when you're 30. You're like, I am now forced to live with my family, not I'm there for 2 weeks in between tours. It's like, oh
Yeah.
no, now I'm there until, like Meredith and I were in the middle of, we moved out of California last April, and we've just been touring, and then we went back to do the album, and then we've been touring again, and we're like in the middle of moving, and now this happens, and all of our tours dry up, and our revenue dries up, and it's like, oh, now we can't move because like we don't have an income to move. So it's been like a really funny, like what was a fun, reckless idea because we were only home every 2 weeks at a time is now like, oh, this is your living situation. Which I mean, we're lucky to have a place to live, so like that's not a complaint. It's just it was a funny turn of
Mm.
events. But so I sent a text to our managers like, we have to do the Patreon, and everybody was on board immediately. We started drafting it, and then a month passed, and then we were still working on it, and we got a lot of people like, you mentioned this thing, did you just hype it up and you're not going to do it? And I was like, no, this is like, we're not just going to throw up some janky thing, be like, hey, pay us monthly, and here's like, i'd rather I'd rather be less a work in progress. So I feel like the thing that we put up is the best version while still being a work in progress, because we've had a lot of people like, and that's the point of it, is to create a community where anybody can have input on what they're receiving. So we put together the best tiers that we thought we could, and tiers that made the amount of work worthwhile, because it you are running a small community, and that with that comes a lot of expectations. And so we wanted to create something that would be sustainable, especially when touring starts again. This isn't just going to disappear. This is our de facto fan club now. And we still want to continue to provide, benefits to people beyond just the foreseeable, year, when, as soon as touring starts again. So we put together the best thing that we thought we could, and then opened it up to input. We're like, let's launch it and get people talking. And we launched it early in May, so that, nobody's card would get charged until June 1. So you have like 3 weeks to check out the content, and you have 3 weeks to like see whether you're on board or not. And it's been great. The response has been incredible, and we're almost at 400 patrons. I did not expect to get there that quickly. And yeah, it's just like this little fun corner of the internet, that everybody's been pretty much on the whole just supportive and awesome, and no butt heads in there yet, like causing trouble or anything. That's the fear when you launch an internet community. Especially like a Discord server, you're just hoping that some, some edgelord doesn't show up and start saying stupid things to like try to get a rise out of everybody, which has happened on some other internet groups, related, like fan groups related to us, I've seen. So it's just like, it's good that everybody there is like supporting, and it's a good corner, it's a good home for a lot of people, especially right now that are just bored or lonely.
And I think like the fact that again you have to like pay for these tiers, so they're paying money, kind of weeds out the edge lords. Like no
Yes.
one's gonna pay $10 a month to like crap on Spanish love songs. That wouldn't make any sense.
Although,
Um,
listen, you're welcome to. I will gladly. That's that was our favorite thing for a long time to say. There was a show in Europe where some guy was like, "Hey, man, you guys don't suck as bad as I thought you were going to." And then he
oh
said
my.
some other stuff, and I was like, "Hey, man, thanks for your money," and just like walked away. So I like when people want to make fun of us but still pay us. To me, that's the ultimate.
Yeah.
It's not the ultimate. Like having truly caring fans that I could form a relationship with and like make something fun and interesting with is much more interesting. But if you're gonna be a jerk, I'll take your money. You know.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta like those backhanded compliments are, in my opinion, like worse than just a straight insult because it's just like thanks. I think.
There was a thread on the internet a thread on Twitter about it. It was like German compliments. It's always some like 40-year-old German guy who feels like saying, he just, and it's not, he's not being oftentimes they're not being a jerk intentionally. It's just like a lot of it, I think, is just a language thing and an honesty thing. We worked with a German label very closely, Uncle M, and like the first email that got sent over was like, this is my German honesty, and it was like very blunt, and I still make fun of him for it because he sent over an email that was like, we sent him schmaltz, and he replied with an email that was like, yeah, I thought after you guys sent me Concrete off the first album that the new album was going to, be more of like the Menzingers, and it's not. And he was like, he sounded like he didn't want to sign us, and I found out later he didn't, but his assistant convinced him to sign us, and I still make fun of him for it because we ended up having like, we're like neck and neck for one of his like top selling albums, which is hilarious to me because I'm like, oh, you didn't want us, and now here we are like celebrating. So it's good. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. And I know that like one of the cool, I think it's on the highest tier is the band will actually like make like a custom 7-inch vinyl and send it out to the fans. What kind of
Mm-hmm.
inspired that?
We were about to launch, and I sent over the final tiers to our managers, and they both said we need more at the $100. It's not good enough. And then I didn't come up. I said like, should we do like a beer club and send beer to people? And then somebody said a vinyl club would be great. So that's how the vinyl, like, we'll send you the 6 vinyl a year came up. And then our manager's like, you can get custom printed lath vinyl pretty affordably compared to what it actually costs to print vinyl. And so he said that he's like, why don't we just do custom 7 inches for people? And I was like, oh, that's incredible. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it made total sense because in our head, like if you are, we're not on the Patreon to like become rich. We're on the
Mhm.
Patreon to create something interesting and survive. Like that's our big pitch to people is like, if you want this band to stick around long enough, especially right now, and like kind of thrive in some ways, like we have to pay the bills. And if we can't pay the bills, then we're going to go back to our jobs because like we were all pretty successful at our day jobs. You know, Meredith was a high up retail manager at Big Bud Press in Los Angeles, which is having its moment. And Kyle and Trevor both worked at like very successful studios recording things, you know. And so we didn't like we did not have good jobs. So we
Mhm.
were just like, we're gonna go back to this if we can't survive. Like that's just the reality of being, you know, being an artist these days. Um, I lost. Oh yeah. So when we were saying is like, let's create as much value as we can in the Patreon. So like, if you're paying $100 a month but we're spending, you know, half of that on you, like I hope that people can see that it's a good investment. And that's been kind of our pitch. So that's where the 7 inch came from. And that's where, you know, the vinyl club came from and all this extra stuff because I groaned at the idea of having $100 a month tier. I was like, this seems weird and capitalistic and it rubs me the
Mhm.
wrong way. And I could just imagine some kid on a message board being like, look at these, but like,
Mhm.
look at these, just being like, you know, ooh, you can't. You sit here and complain about not having money. And you're gonna have $100 tier. So we were like, we better put as much value into it as we possibly can. For the people that want to like, you know, spend their disposable income in a certain way. You know, I'm playing video games right now. That's how I choose to use my
Yeah.
disposable income. So you know, not to like. So that's where that whole idea came from. It was like, how do we create like a one of a kind of value for somebody who's willing to give up $1,200 for the year. You know, so it's like it's the custom 7 inch, it's the vinyl club. You know, it's when shows resume, like you get free tickets to a show, or we're gonna buy you dinner, like we're gonna take you out, we're gonna hang. Which I like. We never want to charge
Yeah.
somebody to hang with us. That's like the worst one. But we thought it'd be fun to like give you your merch bundle. Like traditional meet and greets are so weird to me because it's like, here's your merch bundle, here's a signature buy, thank you for paying extra, and it's like that's not how we're going to operate. So it's like, here's your merch bundle, let's go have a beer. Like I
Yeah.
want to get to know you. You're a very special to us because you are in this
Mhm.
weird tier who's like putting themselves on the line to keep us going. Um, and so, you know, stuff like that was always on the forefront of our minds. And that's why there's the jump from like the 25 to the 100, because the 25 is all about the 25 is access based, and it's, you know, you get the lyric sheets and you get free tickets to a show, and it's definitely about like that kind of bigger connection. But then there's no in between tier because like that high tier is where we're going to be invested. We're just going to be reinvesting most of that into providing some type of customized experience.
Definitely. And like two things. First thing is you're so right about that. The meet and greet and nowadays, I always compare it to an assembly line where it's like, smile, okay, next, smile, okay, next,
Yeah,
for the picture. And it feels so cookie cutter and there's no
yeah,
connection. And I remember like back in high school, there's a few bands that I wanted to tell them, hey, I love your music, blah, 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 and it's so great. And they'd be, come on, let's go. They kind of
yeah.
rushing you along a bit. So I love the
Yeah,
idea of meeting
and
them.
I get that it's tough, like especially if you become a bigger band. But my theory is like when you're a bigger band, then you don't need to do the meet and greets. Like then you're just being greedy. Then you're being greedy. Then you're taking advantage of people. Like yeah, I never want to like charge somebody access like to meet us. Like if that's not to say that we're gonna meet everybody. Like we're not always gonna be out at the merch table. Like sometimes it's just not like on the Menzingers tour, we had a few people be like, "Oh, you're gonna be at the merch table." I'm like, I would love to, except there are 1,000 people between me and there. Like,
Yeah.
not that are after me, but like I physically just have to walk through. And so
Hmm.
no, I'm gonna sit in the back and like take a nap. I'm tired.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I would feel so uncomfortable being like, hey, pay extra to come meet us. Like, ooh, that's not good. So that's why we like try to make the dinner and like make it more of a hang. And to me, that's the least interesting part of that tier. But I do know some people that were excited about it, and so it just felt like another. To me, the big part of that is that you get free tickets to a show and free merch. Like that is the gift, the benefit, and everything else is like, yeah, then we'll have a beer. That's fine. So that's cool. Yeah, it it's a weird situation. It's a weird,
Yeah.
like, we're still figuring it out too. We're trying to,
Mm-hmm.
and then like I said, it's a work in progress because we have European and Australian people who joined at that tier. So it's like, well, how are you going to promise dinner to somebody in Sweden if you never tour Sweden? And it's like, well, I mean, a large part of it's based on availability, but like we'll find other ways. We'll, you know what I mean? We'll send you extra, maybe an extra something here, But people have been really, really cool about that. I didn't expect to get that many international people because Patreon is such like an American company to me.
Yeah.
So it's been great, but it's also been like, we have like a thread from all the people who are working on the Patreon. It's like, here's the new problem, and it's like it's great because we have people
Mm.
ready to solve them. But it's a learning experience for sure. I feel like I could go into like a Patreon consultation after this and help other people launch a Patreon because you learn a lot very quickly. I'm just glad it didn't fail. I'm glad it wasn't like 10 people signed up. One of them, like,
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't like my mom and 9 other people. That would have bummed me out.